We'll call this study session of the Union High School District Number 70 Governing Board to order. If you'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence, led by Mrs. Mullins.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may all be seated. Thank you all for attending. I'm sure most of you it was mandatory, but we appreciate you being here. So, moving on, our item of business today is increased student opportunities in career and technical education with a partnership with the Southwest Technical Education District of Yuma, otherwise known as STEDY. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, President Townsend, members of the board, and members of the district who are here to present, as well as the audience that we have here this evening. I am going to turn the evening over to Mr. Brienza, who has been working with career and technical education.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. We're very fortunate to be here tonight with our career technical education staff, and I want to introduce them right now to you before we get started. We have our executive director, Lori Honeycutt, and we have an instructional leader. I believe he's part-time, possibly, but maybe full-time. Norm Champagne. And then we have another instructional leader, Loretta Lansman, from San Luis. So we're very pleased to have them included in the study session. And we do have several members of CTE in the audience, and I would be remiss not to recognize that we have a very proud partner, Superintendent Tom Tyree of STEDY here, with his staff members, so thank you for being here. The purpose of the study session is, A, to have you, as governing board members, ask some questions as they may come up, but also at the same time to talk about the growth of CTE and how the partnership with STEDY, when it began in 2016, has really enhanced what we do for every student in every program for our career technical education. So I'm going to be giving cues to Ms. Elias right now to advance the slides. There's a number, and you should have all these materials with you. And probably one of the most important ones is a glossary. It's a single page front and back, so if we use acronyms or terms that you're not familiar with, they should be on here. But at any time, if you have questions, please raise your hand and we'll address them accordingly. But we have a very large number up there, 89%. Does anyone know what that 89% of students represents? Participation in what? In CTE for a given school year or across 4 years? That's a good question. Yes. Yes.
I think this year. It'll warm up now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I heard Ms. Mellon say this year, it's actually over 4 years. So the cohort 2022 graduating class, 89% of those students actually took one CTE class for at least 1 year during their 4 years in our high school district. Actually, 76% of the students take it at any given time. For example, this year we have 76% of our students enrolled in a CTE course, but over a 4-year period, 89% of our students took that class. And what those students experienced, we'll have our members with us today talk about what that experience looks like, but it's been enhanced since STEDY was formed with Antelope and Union High School District. So I have a question up there. I want you guys to think about this, and you're going to have to write some information down. It's not a quiz. There's no right or wrong answer, but it is information to gauge what you already know or think you know. So how has additional funding increased career technical education opportunities for every YUHSD student? So take a minute, think about how do you think that the additional funding that we've received because of STEDY has increased opportunities for every student? I'm going to ask you to write them down on this Post-it note. And as we go through our study session, if things that you wrote down are brought up, go ahead and put a checkbox or a check mark next to it, because that means, not that you got it right, but you picked up on that. And anyone in the audience, feel free to make mental notes as well, write down some things.
You're not participating.
Give you about 15 more seconds and then we'll share out. All right, sometimes as a teacher, the wait time is the toughest part. But would anyone like to share one or two ideas on how they think additional funding's increased opportunities for every student?
Is it just the four?
Well, it is just the four of you, but if maybe anyone at these tables would like to give input as well. Or we can wait.
Increase courses, I don't know if it's between 72 and 77, somewhere in that range. Is that
Okay.
right? I don't know.
Number of courses have increased, and they'll talk about that in detail and what that looks like, so good.
Obviously, more resources as far as equipment, technology.
Yep. Equipment, technology, the resources that our students and staff have at their disposal, absolutely.
More staff?
More staff. Good. More courses, more staff.
I put increase in college career going, certificates and scholarships. And employment. How about that one?
Those are all great ideas. Not saying they're right or wrong. What's that?
Community engagement, more community engagement.
Those are the
With
results.
schools, with the stadium.
Well, I think we're almost done with the presentation, because you guys are hitting home runs here. But no, those are all in the avenue. Anyone else want to share?
Not me, I'm here to listen.
Good. We'll get some participation a little bit.
Well, I will, don't worry.
Yeah, but no, that's good.
Okay, so.
All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Lori, who's going to take over, and Ms. Honeycutt will go into more details. So, Ms. Honeycutt.
Well, I know it wasn't very long ago that I remember Shelley and Bill specifically going around and talking to everybody and encouraging people to vote for a new CTED. And I remember visiting homes in Dome Valley area, which is where I live, and encouraging people to vote yes. And that just doesn't seem like it's very long ago. We collect a lot of data in CTE, but we rarely look at how has it changed. So this is a great opportunity for us to tell you and for us to look at the data ourselves. So the next slide will kind of give you a snapshot of how things have changed in CTE since STEDY has started. And the first thing we're going to look at is programs. And one of you, Shelley, I think you had that down. So in 15-16 year, we had 52 programs altogether. We are now at 77 programs. And that number will increase again next year as we're already planning for next year and developing new programs. And you are correct, someone else said staff, and so in the school year 15-16, we had 55. Last year it was 91. And that increases each year based on the number of programs that we have. As you can see, the enrollment has almost doubled last year, And as of 40th day, has more than doubled what we started with in the year 15-16. And Shelley, you were right about the college credit. This is not something we normally look at. It's not an indicator for us, and so we rarely kind of look back at, well, what was college credit? But we actually had 17% of our courses that had college credit articulated for it. Now we have 100% articulated. So we've made huge strides in many areas, even areas that are not required for funding. So college credit is not required for funding, but we know how important that is for students to get their foot in the door to college, and since they're engaged in CTE and they like CTE, then that's an easy pathway for them to do. So we now have 100% of our courses articulated. And one of the things that people say, well, how do you start a new program, and why do you start a new program? And that's an interesting mix. Lisa has really a great calendar for us. So we start planning for the next fiscal year in October. And my question to my ILs in our last meeting was, okay, what new programs are you thinking about so that we can start working on that? So it's more than just the idea of starting a new program. We have to think about what's the curriculum, what kind of equipment do we need, when do we want to bring the teacher on? Mr. Brianza, when he was a principal at Cibola, his concept was to bring them on early, mentor them with really good teachers, because they come straight from industry, so they do not have a teaching background. And so he really liked that concept, and we have continued to use that concept whenever possible, is to bring on a teacher early, have a mentor with experienced teachers who have gone through teaching school and can give them tips on that, and then develop the curriculum, develop the program before they even start. Our most recent candidate that did that, is Yuma High School. We brought on an RN who came on 6 months in advance, got to mentor with our other RNs to teach the CNA program. And so when she started the CNA program in the fall at Yuma High, she knew exactly what she was doing. She knew the curriculum, she understood the curriculum, and she started off with a great start because she had that little bit of extra time to work on that development. We're currently doing that with 2 cloud computing teachers. They are mentoring under a company that we have paid for mentorship for them to be mentored, and then they will start those programs next year. So it looks a little bit different for each program, but whenever possible, we like to bring them on in advance so that they can have a better understanding of the curriculum and be better teachers because of it.
I have a question.
Sure.
In regard to programs, how do you decide which program to bring into the district?
So we, whenever possible, find out what the students are interested in, but we also have 2 other indicators. We have the state tells us what is the most needed thing within our state, so that program becomes number 1, and of what we want to try to increase in, if at all possible. And then we have our advisory boards. So our advisory boards tell us, what is needed in our community. Now, sometimes what the students want or families want and what the advisory board wants may be 2 different things. Or it could be that our school doesn't have enough room to fit that program in, such as like a construction lab or an auto lab. That requires a lot of resources, a lot of room, and maybe that's not a possibility. But many times we can bring a smaller program that leads to that program, so it's a stepping stone.
Is each, can you turn it back one previous one, or looking at the programs, this is 52 and 77, 55 and 91. It looks like it grew, the difference is 25 and 36 with staff. Does that mean that some programs need assistance? So there's a teacher and then an assistant or?
I can give you some good examples of that. We are now with our preschool. We have an ECE program, which is early childhood education. And what we found is that the teacher, who is the director of preschool, and currently they are in the process of being licensed so that they can do preschool for other people outside of our district. Currently, they're only doing teachers' students, which of course assists the campus in bringing new teachers that have young children to their campus. And so with that model, we found out that one person is not enough, we need a parapro. And so we have parapros in those programs.
So not all programs are staffed to the same amount. Some you need more. Some.
All programs have at least one certified teacher,
Right.
but we may need additional staff in addition to that.
Okay, case by case basis.
Correct.
Very well.
And that also allows, a good example is welding. When the kids are welding, we want to keep it as safe as possible, so sometimes you might want a parapro in there. If a student has special needs and needs additional help, or if a student, if they're working with level 1 students and you just need additional set of eyes to make sure everyone is safe.
I got it. Right. Each program is different. Unique, different.
Correct.
Now, I'm looking at the enrollment and the 8,497 is almost 50% of the total students that we have in the school district. That's amazing.
Yes, it is. In any one year, it's 76%, but in one cohort, it's 89%. Okay, so Mr. Brianza challenged you to talk about the things, and I think you guys hit on almost every single one of them. We do have increased number in our career and technical education programs now because of additional funding from our partnership with the CTED. And we have equipment, which is up to date, which meets the industry standards because everything is driven by our standards. So our standards in CTE change every 3 years. So based on when standards change, that means different equipment may be required. And so you can bet every 3 years that we're getting new equipment into the labs to meet the needs of what students are going to see in the industry. So, for instance, in the engineering program, we just recently bought some very expensive equipment. We're still waiting to receive it. But the equipment is tied to a new standard that was added to their program. So as the industry adds new standards to our program, then we react by adding new equipment. We also have, you guys have all been on campus, you've seen some of the beautiful labs that we have now. They certainly don't look like when we were in vocational education. I think that's probably a good way of looking at it. But we have done our best to enhance labs as quickly as possible so that students are working in an environment that they may someday see in industry. So we want them to say, if they get a job somewhere locally, we want them to say, yes, I know exactly how to use that piece of equipment because I've used it in my lab. And then, of course, near and dear to all of our hearts is our student participation and leadership opportunities, which is through, in CTE, is Career and Technical Student Organizations. Phil was in FFA. Shelley, were you in FFA?
Was it not?
Your children were. Yes, your children were. So all of the CTSOs are very important to us, and we are very blessed to have the funding that we need so that all of our students can participate if they choose to. The last thing is student industry certification, and we have a huge number of students now participating in industry certification attainment. And it's a big part of what we do. We are not mandated to provide that opportunity. We are mandated for our programs to lead to an industry credential. But we think it's super important that students have the credentials that they need so that they'll be one step up above other people who may not have that. So that's why we continue to support student industry certification like Certified Nursing Assistant or our Home Health Aide, which is at-home care for DCW. Those are acronyms for industry certification that students obtain while they're in high school, which is looks really good on a resume. I'm sure you know if you can put an industry certification on there, and you can also back it up with your the soft skills and professional skills that you learned in your career and technical student organization. It just puts you a little bit higher in that pool of applicants who might be applying for something. Any questions about that? All right, so this is not just starting new programs. We also have replicating programs. And this word wall kind of gives you an illustration of how we have started new programs, but how we have replicated programs as well. So like engineering, we started with engineering at San Luis High School, and we had a very challenging time finding other engineering teachers who came from industry, because remember, you have to come from industry in order to teach in career and technical education. And once we finally started looking for that, and the principals did a marvelous job of advertising when they wanted to start an engineering program, then we were able to get people who came from industry, and we now have engineering on almost all of our campuses. Sports medicine is the same. In fact, the newest person that we have that San Luis hired actually was a student from San Luis and grew up in career and technical education and came back as a sports medicine teacher. So the bigger names are because we've replicated it across many different campuses, whereas the smaller names, we may only have one program, but we're working on replicating it.
If you back up one, please. Make sure I'm on the right one. In addition to this, there's a number of indicators that are identified as showing a quality program, quality CTE indicator, and some of the indicators are much easier to attain when we have the support of our CTED. Some of those would be assessments leading to credentials, which Ms. Hanika talked about, access and equity for all of our students, which is obviously a target of the district. Facilities, equipment, technology, and supplies that are current, updated, and available for the students. Business and community partnerships that we continue to work with as we look forward and deeper in this conversation. We talk about the advisory committees, student career development, and in their career and technical student organization, and also work-based learning that's aligned with the student's educational goals, not just the district's goals, but what the student wants as they go on. Next, please. I thought I had it muted, sorry. Put it on, do not disturb is on. That's not working very well. Number of increased programs on here and differences in the programs. Advantages of work-based learning, as you look at the top line column or line in here. In 15-16, we have 5 co-op programs that targeted 100 students that were working in the community and businesses. At this time this year, all 77 CTE program students have the opportunity for work-based learning, either outside of the classroom or in the classroom. And some of those opportunities are in the health career, in our CNA classes, in our sports med classes, clinicals on the school site, internships, job shadowing, both short and long term, add work experience, jobs in industry that provides opportunity for career and community preparedness. In 21-22, we have 1,512 students enrolled in work-based learning programs. So we've gone from 100 to 1,500 students enrolled in work-based learning. We've hired Mr. Tom Saldejo, I believe is behind me here, to supervise work-based learning, and we anticipate this number of students will increase in the coming years. To give an example of what work-based learning might be in the classroom, in sports med, it can be the students that are working on the football games, working with the trainers. In nursing again in the classroom when the students are doing their clinicals. In automotive, it may be when they're doing work for whomever they might be working for. Early childhood, we have the live labs on a couple of our campuses. And welding, one of the ones that I really like to showcase is when you enter Yuma from most any direction now, you'll see Welcome to Yuma signs. Those were done by the district welding programs. And those are all examples of work-based learning. We have it at the airport, we have it at, I don't know, by Cibola, we have it all over town. So those would be examples that the students learning technical skills in the classroom, but in real-world opportunities.
Okay, I have, oh, sorry, and maybe you're going to answer that. Sorry if I'm jumping in. So on the 290 industry representatives, are most of those local industry representatives, or can that combination of?
It could be, but Ms. Lansman will address if I should.
Jumping in too soon. Sorry.
I'm going to go ahead and explain the purpose or CTE advisory board participation that we have here, but before that I want to kind of give a brief background on the explanation. So our advisory board committees is a group made up of local industry professionals, teachers, students, administrators, and parents. The purpose of the advisory board committee is to support the program development and improvement to ensure students are well prepared for career and post-secondary paths. CTE advisory committees are essential to the future success of our programs by receiving program feedback. So that's one of the main things that we look when we meet with our advisory board meetings, that feedback from industry as it continues to change. So the implementations from trends, because different careers constantly change, so we need to know, like from industry, what are things that they see in industry that we need to integrate into our curriculum. Recommendations for equipment. Sometimes industry are going to a yearly conferences and they get to see firsthand what is the new technology that is going to be offered for that field. And as well, essential modifications to standard to meet the change in industry. They drive, they're part of the industry, so they know what are the changes and the trends, in the industry, that we can go ahead and send information to Arizona Department of Education that we notice these are the trends and perhaps we need to update our standards. So with the increase of the new CTE programs or district advisory boards, you can see how it grew from 41 industry representatives to 290. So this is all professionals from local Yuma industry that support our district. To help support and continue to enhance all CTE programs, advisory board meetings will not be facilitated by CTILs. So that's one more thing that we're going to be doing to help each program grow on their CTE advisory board meeting. Since we have some programs that they're fairly new and they need that guidance. So currently we have 26 advisory board committees, and then some of them are joint committees due to the career cluster, like example, engineering, construction, and welding, because I have some of the same standards that they kind of like share. And then we have other advisory board committees that are standalone, like example, digital photography and film and TV. And the purpose for that is because that advisory board meeting, they want to be really involved, and then they produce local events for our students. So then we have differences. So in the past for photography, we had done like expos, and as well for film and TV. So those advisory board members not only provide feedback, but they support us as being judges for local and state competitions. There are also guest speakers in our classrooms and advocate for programs. At times when needed, they advocate for programs. And lastly, they help, with any needs that we have in our programs to give us guidance how to teach to our students, because sometimes it's better to hear from an industry professional because they have the hands-on experience that they do in their daily job, So that's the section for advisory board participation. Any questions regarding that? The next section is a short video on our campuses and the equipment that we currently have and a representation of each campus. but then in some programs, actually it's about 2 years because their trends keep changing, especially for the programs that we offer, like technology. Those are constantly changing like every year. So then I'm gonna go ahead. So CTE equipment updates are recommended by ADE, which is Arizona Department of Education, to meet program standards, and then driven by industry. Now with the help of STEDY, our programs have equipment that is up to date with current program trends and support our ADE CTE standards. Equipment has helped students perform better at our TSH, which is our technical skills assessment that students take at the end of the program to measure how well have they learned the standards. So that's one thing that we have noticed, as well as was stated before, certification obtainment has increased for all of the district. And we have noticed post-secondary success. I know that in the last board meeting was shared how some high school was recognized for having students in engineering graduating from any of the universities, at a higher rate, and then they came and they did a study to find out what is it we're doing. And I strongly believe that it's a correlation of everything that we do in CT and then the equipment that we have in the class and the opportunities we offer. With the specialized equipment, students have the ability to now learn and visualize. Instead of seeing it from a book, they actually are able to do hands-on. And I want to kind of share a story that when I walked into the class, I saw students doing the anti-shock trainer, using that as just able to teach them the proper way in case somebody is like choking. So then I actually went to the class and saw that, and then 5 weeks passed by, and one day I was walking into the front office and a parent stopped me, and they just wanted to tell me, I want to say thank you for allowing our students to have this certification opportunity, because her daughter was able to save the life of her 2-year-old daughter that she was choking with a toy. That to me is meaningful, because we're not allowing students to have the opportunity to be successful in their TSAs, obtain certifications, but we change the family's life throughout the equipment that we offer. Okay. And I think the next one.
I did pick out the music, so.
I have a question on the standards, the industry standards. Are this state level or national level?
This is Arizona, so Arizona.
State level?
Yes, state
Standards.
level. And when I mentioned our advisory board members, there's actually a group as well, advisory boards at the state level.
At the state level as well.
That they meet, and then they have a meeting to see what are the changes in that career path and modify the standards. And I want to share that our district does a good job always sending teachers and our representatives here so they can advocate for us in case we notice sometimes some of the standards are outdated, and we want to make sure that they're keeping updated to the standards that are meeting industry.
Thank you.
Sorry, I took it back.
No, in the enhanced lab space, all of CTE is exciting to me. This was just one of the many that's exciting. The state mandates, it's mandated that, why is it echoing? I didn't want it either. I was off. The state mandates that greater than 51% or a minimum of 51% of the time be spent in lab or lab type activities. And that is really where, to me and most of the students, the excitement happens. And if we look at the next picture on here, we're going to show you some examples of remodels, refits, and adds that we've had the opportunity to do in the last couple of years here. As you look at this unit, this is a sports med lab in one of our schools. You can see it under construction. You can see that we took the opportunity to put visual windows in, so if students are in the classroom and students are in the lab, we still have management of the students. We have oversight of them. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that we now have a state-of-the-art sports med facility. As Ms. Honeycutt said earlier, when we send students out or students interview for a job, We want the student to walk out, and if they're asked, can you demonstrate on this piece of equipment? We want the student to say, yes, absolutely, let me show you. Not, well, I've never seen that before. We want them to be industry standard when we bring our advisory committees in, which is twice a year that Ms. Lansman was talking about. Those members help us choose equipment that they're using in their industries, in their labs, and in this case, in the medical profession. Tremendous sightlines on there. In this program specifically, students get, we'll talk about more about it in a little bit, they get their OSHA 10 healthcare cert, they get their adult and pediatric first aid, CPR, and AED cert, they get basic life support for healthcare. So there's a lot of certifications that the students are going to be able to get, and those are some that come in this sports med facility, multiple campuses. Home health aid, if you go to the next one, please.
Can I get a question?
Yes, please.
I'm just curious with the sports medicine, what exactly do students do? I mean, are they hands-on with it if somebody gets hurt, or it's just the equipment? It's medicine, and it's not like welding that you actually weld. You know, with medicine, it's...
They actually do, their work-based learning is sometimes at games where they assist on the sidelines and do what the athletic trainer asks them to do. Sometimes they might be taping an ankle or taping a wrist, so it strengthens that athlete's performance in the game. Or sometimes they're, you know, if someone gets hurt on the field, they're taking the stretcher off, and of course the athletic trainer has the ability to, you know, call somebody who's appropriate to take care of the
So it's
situation.
minor. I was thinking that's sports medicine, that's okay.
They work under the direction of
They work under the direction of the athletic
I was
trainer.
just curious on
the home health aid. You'll look at this and say, my, that looks like a nice science room, but it does not look like a health aid room. So this was on one of our campuses. We had the opportunity to remodel it, to make it fit. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that the facility now looks like an apartment. It looks like a nice one-bed apartment, one bed, one bath on here, which is really important for our industry here. We have a lot of people getting older, myself. And so this is something that students can stay in the community and get a job on. We've got some examples of that, but students here will earn their direct care worker certification. That means they can be hired and paid to take care of. We had a sample where a young lady earned that cert and was able to take care of her mother, and Medicare was able to pay her wages for that support. So it's really timely to move forward on this. The lab looks like, if you walk to the lab, you would see it's a little apartment. It's got everything in it. The students are trained to move through. When they come out with that certification, they would be easily employable in town. If we look at the next one, another one, I love all these. We had an opportunity to steal a room, and so we did. It was something else before, we don't care what it was, but what we made it into, which is saying here, as a beautiful music and audio production lab on here. And if you look at this, the right-hand side is the control, the left-hand side is the control room, the right-hand side is the studio, along with the sound booth in back, an isolated booth. Work-based learning that occurs in this program is, as these students will go out to different district events, they will take things at Yuma High, they've been down to their productions, they'll do some sporting events on it. And this is just one of those that had interest from students that we surveyed. We looked at some other programs around the state, said, yes, this is a good fit for ours. And like so many programs, if you don't research it, you really don't know all the career opportunities that a student can go on here. But when you look at it, there's just a number of things that a student can go forward and do, and a lot of that is now remote and other opportunities on it. So it's been a really good enhancement to that campus, and it was much better than whatever was in that room before. And Ms. Langston.
Next. The next image here is before renovation. It's a film and TV, and then I just want you to take a look on the left corner, and you see a green screen there. The size is about 4 by 4, so that was actually the lab setting for that classroom. So students had to take rotations to be able to use the equipment. So for them to be able to actually learn and master the skills, it was a little bit difficult with the restrictions of the limit of the size of the class. But then, as Norm said, we borrowed some space next door. And our campus was gracious that they did allow us to borrow the space. And now we have, on the next picture, you can see we have a beautiful lab that we have an actual classroom setting where students get to work, but then we have a lab setting. So now the advantage of that is the students are going through the process of having more students in the lab, practicing more of those skills, and allowing them to get more proficient faster, because before they had to do that rotation. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that the teacher could be working with the two groups, and the students in the lab and the students in the class, that they will have visibility. So if you notice in the image, there's big windows there, so then no matter where the teacher is, they can have view on the students and what they're doing, to make sure that our students are safe. Any questions on this one? No?
This particular remodel is in San Luis?
Yes,
I
San
can
Luis.
tell because of the green doors.
Oh, yes, that kind of gives the color. And then one thing that I forgot to mention is that our students, any students from film and TV, they can be able to take the Adobe certification, Premiere Pro. So then this is an industry certification that if a student decides to enter right away to their career path, they have this that they can start entry job. And if a student decides to go to post-secondary, actually that's one of the requirements of ASU. So then the students already has this background knowledge that they're going to be successful. Once again, having our students perform higher, at the college level.
Did you say Premiere Pro?
Yes, Adobe certification Premiere Pro. Next. The next is another lab. This is the before image, and this is culinary. I just want you to make sure that you can kind of take a look at the image and then see the working area the students had. So in this image, the space for them to prep and work on their skills is limited. If you're a teacher in the class and then you notice how it's in sections, it's really hard to see what the students are doing and kind of like guide the students if they're doing anything wrong. So then the space was not working, effectively for the students. So on the next image, and the next image, you can see the lab being renovated and allowing for more students once again to be able to continue to practice the skills. All students, not only a portion of the students, everyone is in the lab working on their skills. But the thing is that the teachers be able to see all students working and make sure that everyone is safe, and be able to correct any techniques that students may be doing wrong, when they're practicing their skills. And as well, students have multiple opportunities to obtain certifications in this program, HOSHA, and as well CERT sleeves. So if you remember the first image that that was on the screen for the culinary, actually this is the current location. So then when culinary was renovated, once again we borrowed space, and then the current culinary is now the nursing lab. And students in this program now have industry equipment that matches the industry they're going to go for medical fields, as well college. So if they go to any college, this is the equipment they're going to be working. So once again, allowing students to be more successful on their career path if they choose to be going to industry right away or post-secondary. And once again, our students have the opportunity to obtain the CNA certification in this program.
Another item near my heart is CTSO, Career and Technical Student Organizations. The district has 7 of them, very active. You can see them on the slide. CTSOs have activities that develop and reinforce relevant technical skills, employability skills, knowledge, It's an opportunity for students to interact with business and industry, with community partners, with leadership activities. The CTSO numbers for last year, very, very impressive. We had 8,490 students enrolled in CTE in CTSOs last year, and 5,439 of them, or 64%, participated in either travel to visit local businesses, participated in work-based learning, participated in leadership or Skills USA or CTSO contests, skill-based. Keep in mind that last year started as essential travel only. So if we're looking at 64% of the students active last year, again, we anticipate this number to be bigger this year. We've already seen tremendous excitement about the CTESO leadership events, both local and state. Our district programs are recognized at both the state and the national level. These CTSO programs nationally recognized as being some of the best in the nation right here in this district. One of the ways we have, and that really should clap hands on that one, membership is paid for. One of the things we do or allowed to do is we pay for membership for our CTE students. So every CTE student in every CTE program is a member of their CTSO. That has not always been the case. We used to have to fundraise, we used to have to beg, borrow, and steal whatever it took to get the membership in. But as of now, and actually for a while now, every student is a CTSO member. They're a part of their first professional organization, and it is not a club. It's an integral part of the class. It's mandated by the class or by the state that it is part in the CT program. It's one of the indicators of a quality CT program. And right now, we think nobody is doing it better than YUHSD.
My turn? Okay, I just wanna. So this is I wanna just share like how it was different in past years and now with STEDY, you know. So before STEDY, our advisors had to do a lot of fundraising to be able to cover the cost of our travel, registration, and perhaps sometimes hotels if we were staying overnight, and including meals. So that limited the amount of students that could participate because depending where you are in the campus, an example for my campus, it will be hard to do a lot of fundraising because if we had one event, maybe only on that event our fundraising total was $1,000. With other campuses, they could have the same event and they will raise $10,000 for the same event. So before STEDY, we had to do a lot of fundraising to make sure that we provide those opportunities. So now that we have STEDY, I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that we are recognized as being one of the largest districts of CTSO participation with any of the organizations we have here on the screen. So if you had the opportunity to be one of the state leadership events or regional events, we always have recognition as being one of the districts with the largest involvement in the event. Okay. And then I wanted you to think back on the second slide that Mr. Piazza presented. If you guys have your notes. On that slide it says increase CT opportunities for every student in Human Union High School District. With that, I wanted to share my own personal story. I'm a CT graduate. I'm a former graduate from Cova High School. And I'm a completer of business programs, and I participated in FBLA. But what I wanted to share is that at the time when I was in high school, STEDY was not around. So once again, we had to do a lot of fundraising and activities to be able to accomplish our events. Personally, in my family, we had to make the decision that I was a typical high school student that wanted to be involved in 100 things. And my family said, well, it's okay, we can support you and everything that is free, but CTSO, let's go ahead and pick one, because that's gonna cost us money to our family. So then as a student, I had to make a decision of only keeping my path, and the business path was FBLA, which Norm, I did one at Skills USA, but I had to do it myself. So then looking back, now, due to the integration of STEDY, we have eliminated barriers. So that's one thing that I make sure that we learned that we're providing more opportunities for every student. So that's something excites me because now I can make sure that every student has the opportunity if they want to participate. So there should be no barriers that a student feels that I cannot attend this event because I'm not able to pay for this. So I think that's a great accomplishment. One more thing I wanted to note is that students participating in CTE have taken the opportunities to earn scholarships. So every organization offers scholarships for students, and our district is known to have well representation when they make that announcement in state competitions that our students are the ones earning those opportunities. As well, our CTSOs help students gain leadership skills, network with industry professionals that students, when they are participating in state conference, some of them have job opportunities offered them because they did so well in that competition, you know. And as well, our students get to compete and practice those skills that they learn in the class, but now they're competing at the state and regional level and sometimes at the national level. So it's one more time for them to practice what they have been learning in the class. So then, to kind of close my CTE story, I feel strongly that CTE has molded me to the person that I am. And I feel now with the opportunity to STEDY, we are providing more opportunities to our students. So I'm just happy that we have this great opportunity. So I'm closing with that.
On the next slide, we're going to talk about something that we have, that's unique to Yuma Union High School District. Although Mr. Champagne, at a recent event that we were at, pulled the cat out of the bag, and every single advisor was taking notes on what we're doing because they want to implement what we're doing. So one of the visions of STEDY at the beginning was to get students in, as many students as possible in leadership positions so that we could increase the number of skilled people that come back to our community. And so our vision for that was to create another leadership model. And this really isn't for the students who are already officers or already in leadership positions. It was for students who did not have that opportunity, but we knew with a little bit of coaching, a little bit of training, they could become the future leaders of our businesses and of our community. And so the first one level of our leadership model is called Courtesy Corps. So if you've been to one of our campuses, you've probably been greeted by a Courtesy Corps member. And really that was a selfish thing on our part because we wanted to try to keep the teacher teaching the students and keep the students safe in the classroom. Because if the teacher is distracted by visitors, then it could be an unsafe environment for our students. And so with Courtesy Corps making the greeting as soon as someone comes right through the door, then they take that away from the teacher. Teacher continues to teach. The student can say, this is what we're learning in the lab, would you like a tour? And it gives the student that opportunity to gain leadership skills. And so that was the first level. And you can see that we have quite a few students who are involved in Courtesy Corps. And we're excited to say on 2 different campuses, the principals have grasped the same vision. And our student leaders are training Courtesy Corps for every single classroom on campus. So it's been spreading. Our next level is if a student has stayed in good standing and has participated in an interview with CTE as well as administrators, they can be eligible to be a CTE ambassador. And ambassadors learn how to advocate for things, advocate for themselves. And I'm going to tell you that this year's group, when we took them to Washington, D.C. to meet our senators and representatives, one of the students came up to Mr. Champagne and said, how is Yuma Union paying for this? And so we taught them for a whole week on ask those questions, ask the hard questions, find out, from the senators, what are they spending their money on? And so Mr. C said, you need to ask that person right there. And so she came right up to me and she said, how is Yuma Union able to have this many students here when the rest of the nation only has a couple? And so I said, well, let me tell you exactly how we're doing it. And so I informed her, and I'll tell you what, that student will be a better leader someday because she knows and understands when to ask questions and the right way to ask questions. So we're excited about our ambassadors. Our ambassadors go through a series of training. They even do fine dining training because we think that's important because most jobs, interviews now are over a dinner table, and not all of our students are eating at a dinner table. And so we think that's an important thing. They get to talk to city council members, they get to talk to our Arizona legislatures, and learn those advocacy skills for an entire year. Followed by the ambassadors. If they stay in and they stay in good standing, they are eligible to move on to our next level, which is our CTE leaders. And our CTE leaders, literally, we work those poor students to death almost, but they are on call by the district office, or they are on call by their principals, they are on call by their CTEILs, and most of them meet with them on a very regular basis. But they are the trainers of everybody else in CTE. So when we do a conference, they are the trainers. We don't do it as adults. We allow the CTE leaders to do the training. That helps them to be better trainers, and they'll be better employees someday for our community. This model has worked very successfully for us since 2016 when we introduced it to a room full of our own CTE advisors as well as STEDY people. And STEDY at the time said, you know, we're really in favor of this, and so we continue to embrace it. Even though not everybody in CTE was in favor of it, everyone is now. And we continue to tweak it and improve it. Ms. Landsman had 2 teachers this last year that said, you know, visitors come to my classroom so much, but I never know which direction they're coming from, and my courtesy corps don't necessarily know they're there. So they implemented something new so that people who are visiting the classroom will sign in, so we can make sure that those people who are visiting have goggles on or eyeglasses, and that they're safe in the labs just like everybody else is. And so we've made some tweaks over time, but we're excited to see that we've had a total of, since 2017, had a total of almost 5,000 students that participated in this model. So a lot of people say, how do you allocate funding? And that's always a great question. But what we think it's super important to know is that we have tried very, very hard to make sure that we are a lean machine and that we do a lot of work, my staff does, so that 91% comes back to the student and is used by the student in some way. 9% is used for CTE, teacher professional development, or administrative expenses, but 91% goes back to the students, and we're very proud of that. We're very fortunate to have the funding that STEDY provides us through the funding model, but we're very proud also of the fact that we make sure that it's in the hands of our students and are used by our students so that they will be our future. Any questions on that? All right. Industry certification.
I get all the good stuff. Looking at industry certifications, in 2015-16, the district had, this is a real number, 72 students who earned industry credentials. And those students were either in CNA, Certified Nursing Assistant, or they were in automotive. For those students to earn those certifications, they either had to raise the money, have their parents pay for it, or in some cases take it out of student fees because there was not funding from the traditional sources to pay for this. The last year, CTE students in this district earned 3,306 industry certifications. Every one of those certifications was paid for with CTED funding. The increase is over 4,400%. So again, these are opportunities that students have now moving forward. We don't have to do the fundraisers for the ASE certifications. The new job market is now requiring, in a lot of cases, to have industry credentials and stackable industry credentials, and those are the things that the students are working on now. YUHSD continually has the highest number of students in the state that earn industry credentials as recognized by the state. One of the ways that the district continues to eliminate barriers and to focus on every student is by paying for these certifications. There's another example of the 91% that Ms. Honeycutt talked about going to the students. And I will tell you that a lot of the districts and a lot of the very big districts do not pay for student certifications. We just did a tour of one of the facilities in Phoenix, and signs on the wall were reminding students to pay for to get their money in so they could take their industry certifications and whatever it was. As was talked about earlier, they left out one of the stories that we have a teacher on, you have a teacher in the district that came up through these programs, but to get to the events, to get to the leadership events that they felt they needed to be successful, they were bringing cookies to school and selling them. I'm sure it was after school. They were doing those things to get where they need to be. And right now that person is very successful in this district. But those are opportunities now that we don't have to do that we can move forward because the students have the opportunity to take these credentials. Some of the credentials, in no particular order: welding, AWS welding, American Welding Society, medical assisting can get the CCMA, business, customer service sales, retail sales, Rise Up, we just signed up for that. Mental and social health takes the Article 9 certification. Culinary, Serve Safe, hospitality, restaurant server. Early childhood education gets the opportunity to do both the food handlers and the paraprofessional certifications. Law and public safety, crime scene management, photography, Ms. Lansman talked about Adobe certified associate. Biomedical technology, one of our new programs, the students can earn their biotechnician assistance credential. Drones, they can earn the FFA Part 107. Nursing, CNA, ASE for automotive service excellence, NOCTI, NC3, NCCER. These are all certifications that are available to the student without cost in our CTE programs because of the opportunities that are provided through STEDY in the district. That's all you.
That's all me. Next slide, please. We had mentioned earlier 76%, but I just wanted to show you what that number looks like for each student. So 8,716 students currently are in a CTE program, and I think 3 of them did a wonderful job explaining what that means and what the benefits are and how it's not a tax on a family anymore because of our partnership with STEDY. Next slide, please. Thank you, Ms. Elias. So here are the 5 areas we covered, and I think when we asked you the question prior to even starting, all these areas were mentioned. Increased, number of CTE programs, equipment's been updated, enhanced lab space. They being CTE leaders up here, keep referring to borrowing or stealing space, and it's a delicate dance. And our principals are always supportive of trying to find ways to find that space. And then how does that space get imagined or reimagined by our CTE advisory boards with what's needed. So principals are a driving force behind it because they have to give up space in order to create these wonderful opportunities. Student participation, leadership opportunities, and the certification, Mr. Champagne was only going to read off 7 of them. But he did a very good job, I think, reading most of them off. But it's amazing what our students are able to walk away with and be employable. Any questions at this point?
I am just a little puzzled here how we can do it and other cities or school districts that are a lot bigger and not. So is that kudos to the staff to find ways, and other districts don't pay as much attention as you folks?
Well, I think a good example of that is most recently Mr. Champagne and I heard from a district that is cutting back on funds for their CTSOs, and they said they're only going to allow 10 per program. So they're only paying for 10 per program because that's the minimum requirement. So whereas some districts believe in just meeting the minimum, Yuma Union has a different mindset, and we want to provide as much as we can for every single student.
So it's stacked. No, you could have done.
It's the governing board supporting vision as well.
Right, but I mean, you guys do an outstanding job because you're smoking everybody else.
I'm going to chime in.
Well, shock.
I just think that's really an important point, and a huge point is a credit to the community that has allowed Yuma Union to no longer have weighted grades and play the GPA game that really forces students to select, I'm going to be this or that. And that does not happen, I don't know of anywhere else that happens in a district this size. And you can see that our students now can do both, because it shouldn't be or, it should be and it should be the student seeking that opportunity. I would say that's a huge part of it, but then the commitment that we use all of the funds directly to students has always been the philosophy of the CTE program, but it isn't one thing or the other, it's everything married together. And really, because we have student options, it's education in general, sometimes it's for the adults and the parents to choose, and what space we have rather than the work that you see that happens at every campus. It's a lot of work for principals to reimagine, or whatever the lingo is. It's just a lot of work and a lot of adjustment, and it all takes talent and time and working together. So I think there's a whole lot that goes into it, not just the money part, but vision and philosophy and believing in every student.
No, just turn back the paper. It's like you mentioned, you're running a lean machine, so that's why the money goes to the students and not to big ad. That's the difference. That's what I think it looks like, and the students benefit. Right.
But like Ms. Thompson said, it's a philosophy of the district,
Right.
That allows and supports us to do that. When we were seeing that Mr. Champagne was really close to quitting one year, I went to Lisa and I said, I've got to keep Norm, so what do I do to keep Norm? And that was pulling out of the classroom, because it was too much to be an IL and manage a huge budget along with their principal. But to manage that, it was too hard to be in the classroom. And so we pulled our ILs out of the classroom. As a result of that, that was supported by principals, it was supported by district. It's the only way we could have made that. And you as a board voted on the job description and all of that. So it's really a team effort. Just like Shelley and Phil worked so hard to have the CTE, when many, and I'll say some in our district at that time, did not believe in funding for CTE. And yet, you guys went and visited and allowed us the opportunity to do this for our students.
I want to add to what you said. Mr. Tyree actually called the meeting to start the whole JTED process. Yes. It was me, Tom, Russ, Shelley's dad, and Marvin Marlette, because we knew we had to have somebody from Antelope, and Dr. Bob Camel were the five that first met and formed the idea of then starting the committee and doing, but it was Tom's brainstorm. It was Tom Tyree's brainstorm. Credit for credit.
And I just, one more point, they brought up how we're recognized across the state. We're also the last county to have this type of funding, CTED, JTED. So kudos to everybody in this room and all the people who aren't in this room to make that happen. These are teachers who are away from their families, traveling 12 months out of the year, planning 12 months out of the year. None of this happens by accident. It's a complete commitment from everyone on this team. Like I said, those in this room and those outside of the room. So we're very fortunate to have so many adults that are committed to the students themselves.
I also want to add, when I look at other programs across the state and the nation and the amount of students that we have enrolled, it's The model in some other areas is it's one location that everybody is transported to. And I absolutely, we've said this, you know, our district is the size of Rhode Island. And so I love the fact that it's equitable for all students within our district. So instead of having one location that everybody goes to, which we do, which is great, we have a location, but we have CTE STEDIes that are equitable in every school. And so I think that's a great model and gives that opportunity for every student, you know, to be able to be involved. So I love to share that with others, but yeah, thank you.
Next slide, Ms. Alivas.
There's more.
This is the last slide. So think about what you wrote down earlier, and on another post-it note, if you could just think about this and take as a takeaway on your way after we conclude the meeting. I used to think, but now I know. So I used to think this about CTE and how it operates with funding and opportunities, but now I know. So just, you know, for your own personal thoughts, take about 30 seconds to compose it. I'm not going to ask you to share out, but just something for you to think about and maybe share out in the community as well.
Okay, I'm done. I'm done with my sticky notes since I have no one.
I have more sticky notes if you need some. All right, so hopefully you had some thoughts. Once again, hopefully you'll be able to go out and share in the community. But I do want to thank Superintendent Tyree here once again for coming with the staff, our principals as well, our CT leaders, instructional leaders for taking time to help support and gather this data as well. It was not an easy task, so thank you very much. But Ms. Thompson.
President Townsend, governing board members, that concludes our study session unless you have questions.
Does the board have any questions?
I want to say thank you because I know and all the work that goes to bring all this information together, it really helps us to be that voice to other people when we're in conversations, no matter where we are. And so I try to remember some of those. Mine is the 9% to 91. I'm just sharing. I'm adding that into the little into those backs. So thank you. It really does help.
I just want to thank our staff, you know, CTE staff and everybody else that's here that helps with this program. You know, you just got to have the passion, and I can see it. It's not about age. It's all about having the passion to help, you know, these kids to be the best they can be in the future, you know, in either type of, if it's welding up to engineering or what have you. But I mean, me myself working with teenagers and young adults for many years, it takes a lot. You know, going to the national conference with you guys helped me to understand a lot of things and see things that how much it takes to be able to accomplish what have you guys accomplished as a staff to get where we are now with these numbers. And it takes a lot. It's not just, you know, having something and showing, but reality is, you know, it takes a lot of work. So I praise you guys for what you guys do. You know, everybody that's in the room here, who is involved with the CTE program and any other program with STEDY with Mr. Tyree as well. It's something you guys started way back, but I really praise you guys for what you guys do for the kids in the community.
Can I have one more thing? I'm sorry.
Really?
I'm sorry. I just want to just take the opportunity to say how grateful I am. I know my husband is too for the education that we received in this district, but then for our kids, and you can now say grandkids, so, right?
Are you saying on hold?
Yeah. So, thank you.
Anything else?
The only thing I can say is I'm really impressed. Really impressed. besides me freezing in here.
When are you gonna learn to bring a coat? You complain every night.
Being a big critic, and for me to say that I'm impressed with what you're doing means a lot. And I'm a grouch, so.
Yes, he is. I have a question. I'm assuming this is going to be posted, this meeting, somewhere since we're filming it?
Yes, it'll be on our website.
Okay. Because I know there's people that I'd like to refer to this because it's very informative, very good. So thank you all very much. With that, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.